So there's a lot of conjecture about people with Asperger's and having creativity. Now, I don't believe this is true. I, for one, have Asperger's and I actually have a certificate in contemporary arts. And I thought I would go through and show you some of the stuff I have done over the years. I was currently doing a jewellery smithing course last year as well before I went on my holidays. Anyway, these are some of the images I've come up with that I've drawn over the years. Now, that page was completely my own concepts. These were actually ideas I had made up for on how I pictured my psyche actually fitting together. There being a control room that has been my conscious, with a great room with stone walls and various other windows and stuff. And I have another image here for you. Alright. This is a painting I did during my contemporary arts course that now sits above my parents' bed. It's a rose done in Georgia O'Keeffe style with oil paints. It's a very high contrast, and I'm quite proud of it, even though it did take me quite a while. I actually have a purple one here on the wall as well that I did for myself a few years later. So I think a lot of the reasons that people consider people with Asperger's lacking a creative skill is because of the difficulty a lot of us have showing it. My theory behind the idea is that it comes down to the old choice um, difficulty, meaning that when you have a few choices, like four, it's easy to make a decision, but when the choices are too much, like 10, it's a lot harder to weigh up the weight behind each decision or choice. And I kind of see it in my mind as my creativity is that I have too much to choose from. And it's very difficult to choose a color, a texture, a depth, a contrast for a lot of things. And this is where I believe most people with Asperger's hit a roadblock. It's very difficult to get into that kind of field and be able to do it quick. Well, do it at a steady pace because the amount of choices in the situation tend to almost be overwhelming. This, I believe, is from the amount of information I take in. I know for a fact that the amount of information I take in is around about 10 times more than most neurotypicals. This is because of the theory that someone else has tell me. This is a theory I believe in as well. That our filters don't tend to work so well. We don't really come with a filter. We have trouble turning off all the other information in the room. At any given time, wherever we're seeing, we tend to be taking in every bit of that information. And because of this, I think this is also the reason why we tend to fall behind on social cues. Like we're already trying to process the extra amounts of information coming in that we're not paying attention to the little details that are coming from people. And so as we grow older, we tend to fall behind because of the lack of understanding the situation and reacting in time. Anyway, I thought I'd show you a few more of what I've done. This is just a small um, just trying to do a picture on ink. This was quite a few years ago, just based off Lord of the Rings. Anyway, as you can see, the details are quite high, but some of the proportions are out of spot. And I think that comes from the fact that I tend to microprocess and not multi-process. I tend to focus on very, very small subjects of area where having to deal with a copious amounts of information tend to become more difficult. I think this is why a lot of people with Asperger's tend to be specialists in certain areas, because our obsessive tendencies tend to take us down the road of understanding a single subject to a point that it's almost obscene. Uh, it can be a good thing, especially if we want to continue in that specialist area. It took me a long time to get perception of actually, how to put this. Well, I'll just show you what I mean. Basically, it took me time to get the hang of actually doing proportions within drawings better. Because even though I could get the fine details correct, the proportions took time. Of course, they finally came along, and I learned a few tricks, like actually drawing a figurative structure around what I'm drawing before I actually started putting the details in. This I found tedious, but I actually pushed myself to do it until I got to a point where it really came out. Anyway, this is a... Oh, sorry, wrong one. Anyway, this is a great example of how I can focus on details and just really give an image the details that I see in the world. I know the proportions look quite good on this, but this is quite early when I started to draw. It was easy for me to do a jacket where the actual proportions didn't really matter so much. Basically, all I needed to keep in proportion were the shoulder and the arm lengths. But if I show you this image again, you can actually tell that one of the arms isn't quite long enough, even though it's sitting quite straight. But you don't notice it because the jacket is that kind of design. The material pushes and moves as it will. And so after I started getting better, I started getting into using color for contrast as well. This is a character from an anime I'm quite a fan of. And as you can tell, I'm still using quite bold lines for a lot of my works. I'm not sure why, but I have a tendency to draw with bold a lot more. I think it's something to do with the fact that I like having a well-defined line. It gives me structure to work with. That might come from a tendency to need that structure, so I might be bringing in my own personality needs into my own art. But oh well. Anyway, I was going to show you this as well, just before I finish up. This is a nickel silver engraving I did during school last year, well, university, and as you can see, it's quite detailed, even though it's quite bold. So I found an area where my actual style and art would come out better. This was done doing a method called press and peel. It's quite a cool method. Anyway, I'd like to finish on the note that there's a lot of creativity running through people with Asperger's. I think the fact is it's very difficult for them to tame it, I guess. So if your kid is autistic and they struggle with being creative, it's not a reason to take him out of any kind of art programs. I found that some of the art programs I did were some of the most enjoyable things I ever had done. As providing there's a teacher that doesn't have strict artistic rules. I think if the teacher's going to tell your kid not to express themselves in a way they're doing, well, it'd probably be a bad environment. A good environment's with a teacher who can go every which way with expression of artistic intent. So I hope you enjoyed this, guys, and I'm glad I got to share some of me with you.